There you go.
We'll begin with a ball of clay that you get from the student clay bin. You'll start with 1.5 pounds of clay, measure it on the scale, make sure it's close, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then with wedging, I like to do 30 both ways. You need to do at least 50 wedges per each throwing. So I'll start here, put your hands out, thumbs together, wrap your hands around the ball, push it, keep going. Don't push too much because you'll get a hangover at the end of the clay, and that will get in your way and create air pockets, which is the whole point of wedging clay. Once you do 30 or however many like that way, it'll end up like this. Turn it to its side, do 30 more. When you're done, it won't be perfect, but it'll be completely wedged. I like to throw mine into a ball, or at least into a cylinder, and that's wedging clay.
What advice do you have for students who don't want to do that?
Start with small weights and just get really good at wedging it the right amount of times, because it will help you on the wheel, then you won't have to redo it over and over again.
So stick to 1.5 pounds and 2 pounds of clay, don't go over that?
Don't go over that until you feel really comfortable wedging it fast enough and being comfortable on the wheel with it. And that's finished.
And I'll just follow you over to the wheel then.
Okay.
What are you doing there?
I like to center it as much as I can with my hands, so I don't have to fight with it at the beginning. And you smack it down so there doesn't get air pockets underneath. Make it into like a hamburger, I guess. Make sure your chair is all the way up against the wheel. You want to be as close as you can. I like to have the wheel turning clockwise. While I center it, I'll do this again.
What does that do?
Takes the clay off the bottom around the edge, because that sometimes if you don't put your hand all the way down, it'll spread out, and that can cause your hand to wobble into it and make it off center.
So you want your hand riding on the wheel.
Hand on the wheel at the bottom, and equal amount of pressure on both the top hand and the side hand. And it's centered.
Any pointers for students up to this point? What's one thing you make sure you do?
I make sure that I have enough water so the clay doesn't go dry, because then you cannot center it, and I'll guarantee you that you're gonna, when you push your outside hand against it, clay's gonna come off into your hand. You're gonna have to start over from wedging. After you have to clean your whole wheel. Just go slow at first, and then you want to bring the wheel at least close to, if not, its full speed at the end once it's fully centered.
So the water just keeps it sliding through your hands.
Yep.
And it's easier to center that way for you?
Yes, the water helps a lot.
Okay.
Same with opening it, you need to keep water in it, otherwise the inside liquid is going to get really dry. You may knock it off a little bit centered, as I did, but you can easily pull that back before you start pulling your wall.
How do you pull it back? If you knock it off center when you're opening it, like you just said, how do you center it again?
I'll keep both my thumbs on the inside and hands on outside, and just hold them there until you start to feel it's not moving again from side to side. Like that.
Where did you learn how to open the clay? How to open it like that?
I learned from Mr. Hall. He knows many different ways. Some people will do it with 2 fingers pushing it in. I like to do it either with one thumb, depending on the amount, or both, so I can keep both my hands on the outside pushing in to compress the clay from the outside in.
Is there a wrong way of doing it?
Whatever works for you. I definitely stick to one of the ways that Mr. Hall teaches at first, and if that's not working for you, technically there's no wrong way of doing it.
Have you picked up pointers from other people, or do you just strictly listen to what Mr. Hall tells you?
I'll pick up pointers from other people as you can watch them, how they throw different techniques. There's many students that do things differently that work for them. You can always ask them for help also, or you can try one of the ways recommended.
You compressing the lip to keep it tight?
Yep, because otherwise it'll fall over. And then I'll go back in with my sponge and smooth out the inside. Right now there's obviously a lot more clay at the bottom than the top, and there's a little dimple at the end that you can just push down and begin to pull out.
Are you pulling right now?
I am pulling my first pull on this fold.
Pay attention to how tight his wrists are and where his elbows are in comparison to his body. He always has one elbow locked in tight. And that would be his left elbow right now. You can see he came up that wall with a very even fluid pull. It wasn't quick and it wasn't inconsistent. The speed he pulls with matches the speed on the wheel. His hand positions right now are at 7 o'clock. Your hands are always going to be at 7 or 6 when you're throwing. I mean 7 or 5, excuse me. There he is compressing the lip again. He said it would fall over. Sometimes it'll crack and fall over.
More times it'll crack. This will be my final pull. The majority of this pull will be to even everything out. When you throw a bowl, which will be a project in beginning level of ceramics, you want to make sure that you have the right shape on the inside. And the outside is not as important because that'll come from trimming it once you're all done.
But the two should kind of relate a little bit.
They should definitely relate. It can't be terrible, but I would focus more on the inside and make sure that the outside does follow the inside also.
See how carefully he comes off of that lip? Goes back and compresses it again. Very important to compress that lip every single time. It's cleaning all the slip off the outside of the bowl. That just smooths it out and enables them to pull it off of the wheel easier. It also helps in the drying process. If you leave all that wet water in your bowl or outside of your bowl, it prolongs the drying process and it will dry unevenly and crack.
Yes, it will, and it'll be much harder to trim if you make it far enough without it cracking.
You pretty much done?
Pretty much done with the throwing part, and then at the end I would use my tool again to take off the remaining clay around the base, and I would get the wires, come through it, the two pinchers to go underneath, set it on a clean, dry board, make sure you haven't washed it recently, because you don't want it to be too wet on the bottom, because then the top's going to dry much faster than the bottom, and that's going to run into issues with trimming the bowl. So that's a decent sized bowl from 1.5 pounds. I made mine wider than most people will, but you can still